Lessons on Forgiveness and Redemption. The Shattered Peace. The town of Crestwood had always been a place of quiet and serenity. Tucked away between rolling hills and surrounded by dense forests, it seemed impervious to the chaos of the outside world. Neighbors knew each other, children played on the streets, and life moved at a peaceful, predictable pace. That is, until the incident that would forever fracture the peace. It began on an ordinary Thursday afternoon. The sun cast a golden hue over the town, and the air smelled of freshly cut grass. People were going about their business as usual, unaware that in a small, modest house on Maple Street, something unthinkable was taking place. Jennifer Myers, a mother of two and a beloved member of the community, had always been known for her kindness and patience. She volunteered at the local church, organized charity drives, and never hesitated to lend a helping hand. To the outside world, her life seemed perfect. But behind closed doors, Jennifer harbored a secret that was about to explode into the open. Her son, 19-year-old Alex, had been struggling with addiction for years. His dependence on drugs had led to theft, lies, and violence, tearing the family apart. But Jennifer, clinging to the hope that her son would one day change, never gave up on him. Despite the pleas of her husband, James, to distance themselves from Alex, Jennifer believed that forgiveness and love were the only ways to save him. That Thursday afternoon, Jennifer found herself standing in the kitchen, staring at her son. His eyes were wild, pupils dilated, and his hands were shaking. He had returned home after months of absence, demanding money. But this time, Jennifer refused. She knew he would use it to feed his addiction, and she couldn't enable him any longer. "No, Alex. I can't give you any more money. You need help, real help," Jennifer said, her voice firm but laced with pain. Alex's expression darkened, his face contorting in rage. "You don't get to tell me what I need. You think you're so perfect, always judging me. I just need this one time, Mom. Just give me what I want." Jennifer stood her ground, but her heart raced as she saw the fury building in her son. "I love you, Alex, but I can't do this anymore." And that's when everything spiraled out of control. Alex lunged at her, knocking her to the ground. The sound of dishes shattering filled the air as Jennifer tried to push him off. She screamed for him to stop, but he was lost in his desperation. The struggle intensified, and in the chaos, Jennifer felt a sharp pain in her abdomen. Her vision blurred, and the world seemed to slow down. She realized too late that Alex had grabbed a kitchen knife. Blood pooled on the floor as Alex stood over her, breathing heavily, the knife still in his hand. Jennifer gasped for air, her mind racing with thoughts of her family, her life, and most of all, her son. She had always believed in forgiveness, but now, in these final moments, she wondered if it had been a mistake. As the life drained from her body, Alex dropped the knife and fled. The house fell into a deadly silence, interrupted only by the ticking of the clock on the wall. Jennifer's last thought was a prayer, not for herself, but for her son. The aftermath. News of Jennifer Myers' murder spread through Crestwood like wildfire. People couldn't believe it. How could something so horrific happen in their quiet town? The image of Jennifer, the caring mother, had been shattered along with her life. And as the shock settled in, the town's collective grief turned to anger. Alex Myers was now a fugitive, wanted for the murder of his own mother. The police launched a manhunt, searching every corner of the town and the surrounding forests. Helicopters hovered above, and roadblocks were set up, but Alex had seemingly vanished into thin air. Rumors began to swirl. Some said he had fled to the city. Others claimed he had taken his own life out of guilt. But no one knew for sure. James Myers was left to pick up the pieces of his shattered family. The once strong man now appeared hollow, his eyes distant as he struggled to comprehend what had happened. He couldn't bear to stay in the house where his wife had been killed, so he moved in with his sister, leaving everything behind. But as the days turned into weeks, something unexpected began to happen. Despite the overwhelming anger and grief that gripped the town, there were whispers of a different kind of reaction. Some of Jennifer's closest friends, those who had shared in her belief in forgiveness, began to speak out. They talked about the importance of mercy, even in the face of unimaginable pain. Jennifer would have wanted us to forgive, one of her friends said during a vigil held in her memory. She believed that no one was beyond redemption, not even her son. The words struck a chord with some, but others couldn't bear the thought of forgiving Alex for what he had done. To them, he was a monster who deserved to be punished, not forgiven. The divide in the community grew, and tensions ran high. Meanwhile, Alex remained on the run. He hadn't eaten in days and was haunted by the memory of what he had done. He hadn't meant to kill his mother. It had been an accident, born out of a moment of blind rage. But that didn't change the fact that she was gone, and he was the one responsible. The hunt for redemption. Alex Myers wandered the outskirts of Crestwood, hiding in the dense woods and moving only at night. His mind was a whirlwind of fear, guilt, and desperation. Every rustle of leaves or distant crack of a twig sent his heart racing. He knew the town's search for him wouldn't let up until he was found, but more than that, he knew that he would never be able to outrun what he had done. His mother's face haunted him, her final moments etched in his mind. Her words, filled with love and pain, echoed in his ears, reminding him of the choice he had made. "I love you, Alex, but I can't do this anymore." He wished he could go back, take away the rage, and beg her for forgiveness. But there was no going back now. He had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. By the third week, Alex had run out of places to hide. He had been sleeping in an abandoned cabin deep in the forest, but he knew it wouldn't be long before someone found it. Crestwood wasn't large, and the police would eventually search every inch. Exhausted, hungry, and tortured by the crushing weight of his guilt, Alex began to consider turning himself in. One night, while crouched near a stream trying to catch a drink, Alex heard voices in the distance. They weren't the frantic shouts of search parties or the hum of police radios. These voices were calm, steady. He crawled toward the sound, careful to remain hidden, and spotted a campfire not far away. Two men sat around it, talking in low tones. His stomach growled, and his thirst for human contact grew stronger than his fear. He took a deep breath and stepped out of the shadows, his voice cracking as he spoke. "Help, please." The men jumped, startled by his sudden appearance, but quickly recovered when they saw the state he was in. His clothes were filthy, his face gaunt, and his hands trembling. One of the men, an older gentleman with a gray beard and a weathered face, stood and approached cautiously. "You all right there, son?" the man asked, eyeing him warily. "I am not. I need help," Alex muttered, his eyes darting nervously as if the police might appear from the trees at any moment. The second man, younger and tougher looking, narrowed his eyes. "You're that kid everyone's looking for, aren't you? The one who—" "Yeah," Alex interrupted, his voice hollow. "I'm the one." The older man sighed heavily.
"You better sit down, then."
"Tell us what happened." Over the next hour, as the fire crackled between them, Alex told the story of that day. He didn't sugarcoat it, didn't make excuses. He spoke of his addiction, his rage, and how, in a single moment, he had destroyed everything. His hands shook as he spoke, but there was a strange calm in finally admitting the truth out loud. The two men listened in silence, their expressions unreadable. When Alex finished, the younger man shook his head, disgust evident on his face. "You think a sob story like that is going to make anyone forgive you? You killed your own mother, man. You don't deserve to walk away from that." Alex bowed his head, unable to meet their eyes. "I know. I don't expect anyone to forgive me." The older man was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. Finally, he spoke, his voice measured. "Forgiveness is a hard thing. Not everyone's going to give it to you. And maybe they shouldn't. But you gotta ask yourself, what are you gonna do now?" Alex blinked, unsure of how to answer. He hadn't thought beyond the moment he fled the house. He had been consumed by fear, guilt, and the need to escape. But what now? Was there even a path forward for someone like him? "I don't know," Alex whispered. "I don't know what to do." The older man leaned back, rubbing his chin. "Redemption doesn't come easy, son. But it's not impossible. If you want any hope of it, you'll have to face what you've done. Running won't help you. Hiding won't either. You'll never outrun your guilt." The only way to make it right, if you can, is to face the people you've hurt. Alex felt a weight in his chest, heavier than any he'd felt before. He had known deep down that he couldn't hide forever, but hearing it spoken aloud made it real. Still, the thought of walking back into that town, of facing the people who had loved his mother, who had trusted him, filled him with dread. Could he even survive the consequences of his actions? "I don't know if I'm strong enough," Alex admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. The older man stood and placed a firm hand on Alex's shoulder. "Strength isn't about never being afraid. It's about doing the right thing even when you're terrified. And right now, the right thing is turning yourself in." For the first time in weeks, Alex felt something other than fear. It wasn't hope exactly, but it was a kind of clarity. He had to stop running. If there was any chance of finding forgiveness, of redeeming himself even a little, he had to face the consequences of what he'd done. With the men's help, Alex made his way back toward Crestwood the next morning. The walk was long and heavy, each step a reminder of the reckoning he was about to face. The town came into view, the rooftops appearing over the hills, and Alex's heart pounded in his chest. As they approached the outskirts, the older man stopped him. "You ready?" Alex took a deep breath, his stomach churning.
No.
"But I'm doing it anyway." The moment they stepped into town, everything changed. Faces that had once greeted Alex with warmth and kindness now looked at him with suspicion and hatred. Whispers spread like wildfire. The police were alerted, and within minutes, Alex was surrounded by officers.
He didn't resist.
He didn't say a word as they cuffed him and led him to the waiting squad car. All he could think about was what came next: the trial, the sentencing, and whether anyone would ever find it in their hearts to forgive him. The trial. The trial of Alex Myers was a media sensation. News outlets from across the state descended upon Crestwood, eager to cover the story of the boy who had murdered his mother in cold blood. The trial of Alex Myers drew attention far beyond Crestwood. News vans lined the streets, reporters eagerly awaiting the next development in what they called the ultimate betrayal. The courtroom buzzed with tension, packed with townspeople, curious onlookers, and family members of both the victim and the accused. Cameras flashed as Alex was escorted into the courtroom, handcuffed, his head bowed in shame. James Myers, Alex's father, sat in the front row, his face a mask of grief and exhaustion. His sister, Marie, sat beside him, her hand on his arm in silent support. The sight of his father's haggard appearance crushed Alex inside. He had robbed James not only of his wife, but of his entire sense of peace. As Alex took his seat at the defense table, he avoided his father's gaze, unable to face the weight of his own guilt. The prosecutor, a sharp and confident woman named Samantha Gray, wasted no time painting Alex as a dangerous, volatile individual. She described his long history of substance abuse, his violent tendencies, and the tragic day he had taken his mother's life. This was no accident, Gray declared to the jury. This was the culmination of years of reckless, self-destructive behavior. Alex Myers is not just a troubled young man, he is a murderer. Alex sat stone-faced as the prosecutor's words washed over him. He had nothing to say in his own defense. Everything she said was true. He had been reckless, selfish, and destructive. His mother had given him every opportunity to turn his life around, and he had repaid her with violence. He deserved the punishment that was coming his way. But then, something unexpected happened. The defense attorney, an older man with a calm demeanor named David Hollis, took a different approach. He didn't deny Alex's guilt. Instead, he focused on the story of a boy lost to addiction, spiraling out of control, and consumed by a sickness he could not conquer. Alex Myers did something unforgivable, Hollis admitted in his opening statement. He took the life of the person who loved him most in this world. But Alex is not a monster. He is a young man who has battled demons that many of us could never understand. What we must consider today is whether there is room in our justice system for mercy, for understanding, and for the possibility of redemption. The jury was left to grapple with that question. Could someone who had committed such a heinous act ever be forgiven? As the trial dragged on, witness after witness took the stand. Friends of Jennifer Myers spoke of her endless devotion to her son, how she had always believed he could change, even when everyone else had given up hope. Alex's former classmates testified about his descent into addiction, describing him as a bright student who had lost his way. But the most powerful moment came when James Myers took the stand. The courtroom fell silent as he made his way to the witness box. The pain in his eyes was evident as he sat down, glancing briefly at Alex, who could barely look at him. James began slowly, his voice shaking. "Jennifer, my wife, she was the best person I ever knew. She loved Alex with all her heart. No matter how hard things got, she never gave up on him." He paused, struggling to maintain his composure. "When she died, I thought I would never be able to forgive him. I was angry. I still am. But as much as I hate what Alex did, I know Jennifer wouldn't want me to carry that hate forever." The courtroom was silent, hanging on every word. James took a deep breath and looked directly at Alex for the first time since the trial began. "Alex, I don't know if I can ever fully forgive you for what you did, but I want to try, because that's what your mother would have wanted. She believed in forgiveness, in redemption, and in second chances. And I want to honor her memory by trying to find a way forward. Not for you, but for her." Alex's eyes filled with tears. He had expected his father's hatred, his condemnation. But to hear even a glimmer of forgiveness, it was more than he deserved. He lowered his head, overcome with emotion. The jury deliberated for hours, weighing the evidence and the emotional testimonies they had heard. The question wasn't just about guilt, it was about punishment, and whether Alex's life was worth saving after what he had done. When the verdict finally came, the tension in the courtroom was palpable. The jury foreman stood, and the room held its breath. "We, the jury, find the defendant, Alex Myers, guilty of second-degree murder." There was a murmur throughout the room. Alex felt his world close in around him. He had been found guilty, as he had expected. But what came next would determine his fate, how long he would spend behind bars, and whether he would ever have a chance at redemption. The sentencing phase was even more gut-wrenching. Samantha Gray pushed for the maximum sentence, arguing that Alex's actions were too severe for leniency. "This community deserves justice," she stated firmly. And justice means ensuring that Alex Myers pays the price for his crime. But David Hollis argued for mercy. "This young man has shown remorse. He has taken responsibility for his actions. Yes, he must face the consequences, but we cannot forget that his mother believed in forgiveness, even in the face of this terrible tragedy. Let us not take away the possibility of redemption." When the judge finally delivered his sentence, the room held its breath once more. "Alex Myers," the judge said, his voice heavy with the gravity of the moment, "you have committed a terrible crime, and there is no denying that your actions have caused unimaginable pain. However, I believe that even in the darkest of circumstances, there is room for hope, for redemption. You are sentenced to 25 years in prison, with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The room was a mix of reactions, some shocked by the leniency, others relieved that Alex might one day have a chance to rebuild his life. But for Alex, it didn't feel like leniency. It felt like a lifetime, and he knew that he had a long road ahead if he ever hoped to find true forgiveness, not just from his father or from the community, but from himself. Life behind bars. Prison was a different kind of punishment. The moment Alex stepped into the cold, gray walls of the penitentiary, he realized that forgiveness wasn't going to come easily. Not from the other inmates, not from the guards, and certainly not from himself. Prison was a harsh reality check for Alex Myers. The sterile, oppressive environment was a stark contrast to the relative freedom he had experienced before his arrest. The clanging of metal doors and the murmur of other inmates became his new world, where he was now just another prisoner among many. His days followed a strict routine: wake up before dawn, line up for meals, attend mandated programs, and spend his free time either in the common area or in his cell. The initial shock of incarceration gradually gave way to a more mundane existence, but the emotional toll was relentless. The weight of his crime pressed down on him every day, and the struggle to find a glimmer of hope in his new reality was a daily battle. Alex's cell was small and sparse. A narrow bed, a tiny window high on the wall, and a metal toilet were his only furnishings. The walls were painted a dull gray, and the only decoration was a single photograph of his mother that he had managed to smuggle in. He often stared at her image, searching for a sense of peace or forgiveness that he knew he did not deserve. In the beginning, he kept to himself. The other inmates viewed him with suspicion and hostility, and Alex was well aware of the dangerous environment he was in. He had heard stories of inmates who had been targeted for their crimes, and he knew that his high-profile case made him a target. The threat of violence was a constant fear. However, as time went on, Alex began to seek solace in the prison's rehabilitation programs. He attended counseling sessions and anger management classes, determined to address his inner demons. He knew that understanding himself and his actions was crucial to any chance of redemption, even if it meant facing painful truths about his past. One day, during a group therapy session, Alex found himself sitting in a circle with several other inmates. The counselor, a middle-aged woman with a kind demeanor named Elaine, encouraged the group to share their stories and struggles. Alex was hesitant at first, but found himself compelled to speak.
I
did something terrible, he began, his voice trembling. I killed my mother. I didn't mean to. It was a moment of rage and desperation, but it doesn't change what I did. The room was silent as Alex spoke. Some of the other inmates looked at him with curiosity, while others seemed indifferent. Elaine listened intently, her expression one of compassionate understanding. I didn't just hurt her, Alex continued, tears streaming down his face. I destroyed my family. I was so consumed by my addiction and anger that I lost sight of everything that mattered. Now I'm here, and I have to live with that every day. Elaine nodded, her voice gentle. It's important to acknowledge the pain and responsibility you feel, Alex. But it's also crucial to remember that forgiveness, whether from others or from yourself, is a process. It doesn't happen overnight. Alex took her words to heart. He realized that finding redemption was not just about asking for forgiveness, but also about working to change himself. He started to engage more actively in the prison programs, determined to make the most of his time behind bars. His efforts did not go unnoticed. Over the months, Alex earned a reputation for his hard work and sincerity. He volunteered for various jobs within the prison, from maintaining the grounds to assisting in the library. He immersed himself in learning, reading extensively about psychology, addiction, and even philosophy. The prison library became a sanctuary where he could lose himself in books and gain insights into his own struggles. Despite his progress, Alex faced numerous challenges. He had to navigate the complex social dynamics of prison life, where alliances and rivalries formed quickly. He encountered hostility from some inmates who resented his efforts to better himself, and he had to learn to protect himself without compromising his own values. One day, a particularly rough inmate named Hank approached Alex. Hank had a reputation for violence and had made it clear that he didn't appreciate Alex's attempts at self-improvement. Alex braced himself for confrontation, but instead of a fight, Hank surprised him with a different request. I hear you're into reading, Hank said gruffly. Got any good books to recommend? I could use something to take my mind off this place. Alex was taken aback, but quickly recovered. Sure, he said, pulling out a book from his collection. This one's about overcoming adversity. It might help you deal with things here. Hank took the book, nodding curtly. Thanks. I'll give it a look. The interaction was a small victory for Alex. It wasn't just about surviving the prison environment. It was about finding ways to connect with others, to offer a glimmer of hope even in the bleakest of places. It was a lesson in humility and compassion, one of the key elements in his journey toward redemption. As the years passed, Alex's behavior began to reflect his growth. He became a mentor to new inmates, offering guidance and support to those struggling with their own issues. He participated in restorative justice programs, where he had the chance to confront his past actions and the impact they had on his victims' families. It was during one of these programs that Alex encountered a pivotal moment. He had been granted an opportunity to speak to a group of community members, including victims' families, about his experiences and the lessons he had learned. It was a daunting prospect, but he understood its significance. Standing before the audience, Alex shared his story with raw honesty. He spoke of his mother, his regret, and his ongoing quest for forgiveness. He acknowledged the pain he had caused and expressed his deep sorrow for his actions. His words were met with a mix of reactions. Some were moved, while others remained skeptical. One woman in the audience, who had lost her brother to violence, approached Alex after the session. Her name was Lisa, and her eyes were filled with a mixture of grief and empathy. "I know what you did was terrible," Lisa said softly, "but I can see that you're trying to make things right. It's not easy to forgive, but I appreciate your honesty and your efforts. Maybe, in time, we can all find a way to heal." Alex was struck by her words. It was a small but significant step toward healing, not just for him, but for those he had hurt. He realized that forgiveness was a complex and gradual process, one that required patience and understanding from all sides. The path to redemption. The years went by, and Alex's transformation continued. His efforts to rehabilitate himself were evident, and he began to gain a reputation as someone who genuinely sought to make amends. He earned respect from both his fellow inmates and the prison staff, who saw the positive changes in him. In his mid-30s, Alex was up for parole. The process was rigorous, involving psychological evaluations, testimonies from those who knew him, and a review of his conduct during his incarceration. The parole board considered not only the severity of his crime but also his progress and the potential for his reintegration into society. As he prepared for the hearing, Alex reflected on his journey. He knew that being granted parole would not erase his past or undo the harm he had caused. It was merely a chance to demonstrate that he had changed and to continue his path toward redemption. During the hearing, Alex spoke with sincerity and resolve. He shared the insights he had gained during his imprisonment and his plans for the future. He expressed his unwavering commitment to continuing his personal growth and contributing positively to society. The parole board listened intently, and after what seemed like an eternity, they delivered their decision. Alex was granted parole, with conditions that included regular counseling, community service, and maintaining a stable job. When he walked out of the prison gates, it was with a mix of relief and trepidation. He was stepping into a world that had moved on without him, a world where he would have to rebuild his life from scratch. The freedom he had longed for was now tinged with the weight of responsibility. Alex found a small apartment in a modest neighborhood and began working at a local nonprofit organization that focused on helping individuals struggling with addiction. It was a way for him to give back and use his experiences to support others facing similar challenges. His reintegration into society was not without its hurdles. He encountered prejudice and mistrust from some members of the community, and the stigma of his past was a constant reminder of his journey. But he persevered, driven by the desire to make a positive impact and honor his mother's memory. As the years went on, Alex continued to work on himself and his relationships with others. He maintained regular contact with his father, who had slowly come to terms with the tragedy. Their relationship remained strained, but there were moments of connection and understanding. James visited Alex occasionally, and their conversations, though difficult, were a testament to the slow, steady process of healing. One evening, Alex sat alone in his apartment, reflecting on the journey he had undertaken. He had come a long way from the young man consumed by addiction and anger. He had faced the consequences of his actions, sought forgiveness, and worked tirelessly to change his life. The road to redemption was long and fraught with challenges, but Alex had taken significant steps toward finding peace with himself and his past. He knew that complete forgiveness from others might never come, but he had learned to forgive himself and embrace the possibility of making a difference. As he gazed out of his window at the city lights, Alex felt a sense of cautious optimism. The journey was far from over, but he had discovered that redemption was not a destination but a continuous process, a journey of understanding, growth, and the relentless pursuit of doing better.